Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over why avoidantly attached individuals, tend to feel very deeply connected by somebody who gives them space. And when we are going over this topic, I'm going to also clarify what space means because a lot of individuals might take it a little bit too literal, or they may think it means a long period of time, which is not what I mean when I'm talking about this video, okay? So what does space mean? Space does not mean, let's start with what it not mean, is not seeing them for months or waiting for them to always make the first move. That's not necessarily what space means when it comes to wanting to build a deep connected relationship with an avoidant. So what does it mean? It means not pressuring too often while they're trying to process feelings, or even when you're trying to process feelings, and letting them process what they're ready for and not pushing them to do it a little bit more quickly than they are ready for. So if they're setting some sort of boundary or expression that maybe they need a little bit more time, you can give that time, but that doesn't mean you wait around forever, right? It just means that you're incorporating their perspective as well as your perspective, right? So it's a compromise. It's an adjustment for both of y'all, okay? So another concept of space is also being able to have separate hobbies as well as separate friendships. That doesn't mean you guys can't have friendships and hobbies that kind of correlate or overlap. That's completely fine, and it's reasonable, especially if you guys are in a long-term relationship. However, you don't want that all of your hobbies are attached to your partner's hobbies, to which most of them you prefer doing it with your partner. That will disrupt some of your own emotional regulation, and it will make the avoidant individual, both dismissive and fearful, feel a little bit suffocated and possibly struggle to process positive and negative feelings. And when avoidant individuals feel very overwhelmed by feelings, they may react in a way that's not beneficial to the relationship, okay? And so that's why space is very important. And another perspective of space is also understanding that maybe seeing your partner daily or every other day is too overwhelming in the beginning stages. It depends on the relationship, but sometimes this aspect, seeing each other daily, is going to take a while. And so let's kind of clarify what space necessarily means. It means that there's some independence built into the relationship. That amount of independence is different depending on each individual, but avoidant individuals tend to have a little bit more of a specific concept where they want to protect their independence in the relationship. So these relationships are a little bit more, may look a little detached on the outside, romantic relationships where one or both are avoidants. It may look like there's a lot more gaps in between when you guys connect, but that doesn't mean the love is not as deep or genuine as other attachment styles. And a lot of these concepts of space can be mitigated or dissipated as the relationship goes forward, as long as it's not codependent and it remains interdependent. That usually is fine. So let's give an example scenario, and then we can kind of give examples of how you can use space in the relationship to deeply connect with your partner. So let's say we have a dismissive avoidant male and an anxious preoccupied female, and they're a couple and they face conflict, or they're facing a conflict when preparing for a social gathering invitation, let's just say. And perhaps it's like an exclusive type of thing, so every person has to prepare ahead of who's going and who's not going, so only a limited amount, and maybe the anxious preoccupied really wants their partner to decide if they're going to go as a couple or they're going to go just her, right? Maybe it was for her friend or family or whatever it is, okay? So the avoidant individual, he decides he doesn't want to go, or he doesn't decide, he feels that he doesn't want to go, but he decides to actually go to make her happy. So he says, yeah, we can go as a couple, but he requests that they leave after dinner. So maybe he doesn't want to stay the after part where, maybe everybody's just relaxing or drinking or whatever it is. He doesn't want to stay for that, okay? But she gets upset about that. And this is where the conflict rises. He feels like his compromise is not being recognized, and she feels like he is dismissing her and that he's not taking what she wants seriously. And so where does space come into this? Well, I'll explain it. During this conflict, he becomes increasingly frustrated and starts to shut down. Now, this is what starts happening when space starts appearing for both individuals, right? So the anxious partner is seeking validation and love through their partner as a form of reassurance. So if their partner comes to this event and they stay for the length of time, whatever it is, it allows the anxious individual to kind of show other people that they are in fact in a relationship, that this is a serious relationship, that they go to events together. And that is a form of validation for the anxious, preoccupied individual. And she feels like she can validate herself. Okay, my partner really loves me if he does this. For him, he feels pressured and overwhelmed because he did compromise. He thought he did. And now he feels like that's not being recognized. So that's why he shut down. So now he's starting to feel overwhelmed and he needs space to recharge and process what just happened, because it kind of went a way that he didn't expect. It went a way she didn't expect either, right? But she wants to talk it out. He wants space. And so both partners must find an adjustment and compromise that meets emotional needs to some extent without sacrificing entire desires, okay? So this is where space is important. Sometimes it's okay to take a break from a conflict. Let's just say he requested to take a break from the disagreement, and she honors that while still holding him accountable to return to the disagreement at some point so they can clarify what to do and what to tell the friend at the party, right? So that they can have some awareness of what's really going on, okay? So this compromise is using space. We have used some space. Let's take a break from the argument to return back. And this has created a situation where they will bond more deeply because he feels honored and he feels like his request was honored. Sorry, not he feels honored. He feels like his request was honored. She feels like she can appreciate where he's coming from, but she still wants to hold him accountable. So both of them are standing their ground, but they're also compromising because on his part, he's going to return. He should, right? To the disagreement and kind of figure out what needs to be done. And so they can figure out, okay, we'll leave after dinner or we'll stay for a little bit longer and then we'll figure out whatever it is. They find that disagreement, but it's a lot easier to figure out what to do if they're not angry and they're a little bit stepped away from the disagreement. So why does that help an avoidant to feel deeply? Well, they feel respected. They feel like they can be themselves. So see how when we gave this example, she didn't say anything that he's like antisocial or he needs to change or he's a bad boyfriend for not wanting to do this. She never said any of that stuff. In fact, she decided to respect him and say, okay, this is my side, but let's take a break from this disagreement. I see that you're shutting down. Obviously she didn't mean to do that. She has emotions too. And so it kind of got a little bit out of hand, but she respected him. The ability to be himself. She's allowing him to be himself. He can shut down. He can struggle with compromise if he wants to. But at some point, she's expecting him to be accountable. And she wants to be accountable as well. That's part of relationships. So those are the main reasons that avoidant individuals feel very deeply when space is there, because they feel like they know that not every person needs as much space as they do. And sometimes they can feel ashamed by that. But by you respecting their desire for space, not only have you respected them, you also make them feel accepted by you. And acceptance is one of the deepest ways that an avoidant feels loved. And when I have mentioned many times before, this is a form of respect for avoidant individuals, that you're respecting who they are. And so they're more likely to fall in love. They're more likely to compromise. They're more likely to keep you a part of their life. And that's the reason why. So why not we talk about how you can use space in relationships? So the first one is always to give them, not always, but every now and again, give them emotional space to process a request that you made, right? And so let's say you want to do Thanksgiving together. Maybe they got triggered because one time or before in the relationship, they said they don't do holidays, they're independent, they don't even see their family, whatever it is, right? A lot of avoidants do that. And you let them know that you understand and that this is something that you would like. You understand that that's not possible, but you're willing to respect that. Now, you mentioned that the first, maybe the second or third time that you mentioned this. Over time, as the years go on, they'll process how you reacted when they know they probably didn't react as well. I know that a lot of people feel like it's not fair to compromise an emotional charged moment where you have to always be the bigger person. And I understand that, but relationship is a give and take. Sometimes they're going to be the bigger person. Sometimes you're going to be the bigger person, right? And so they remember how you processed and reacted, right? They process how you reacted, sorry. And so they recognize it was a safe response. And so actually what ends up happening is the next time you ask, let's say you ask a year later and you say, hey, I know that last year we weren't able to do Thanksgiving, but that was something that I really wanted. How are you feeling about this year? We don't have to make it a big thing, but I would appreciate if we do something together on that actual day, right? So you give them time. You gave them like a year before you brought it up again, and they feel more relaxed. They remember how you reacted last year, and they feel like, they got their perspective their way, and you were willing to compromise. So in their mind, they're like, that was really appreciated. I want to give you that back. Now, I'm not saying wait every single conversation or whatever for a year. I just said year for this one because Thanksgiving only happens once a year. So that's why I gave that timeline. Another example is if you want to get married, right? You would like to know there's a possibility of getting married. Let's say you've been together for a couple years and the rapport is really strong. Because you know that you guys have been together for a while, you kind of gauge and check what's your feeling about being married. And maybe they say, maybe the first year or two, they always said, I'm never going to get married, right? That's what a lot of avoidants say. But as trust builds, they change their tune a little bit. I'm not sure, maybe, or I'm not certain. And two, when years go by and you're understanding them and you're trusting them, you give them time to process your reactions a little bit. You ask again and they say, okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea. I think that's a good idea. And I see that a lot, right? Now, sometimes it takes a while. And so I'm not saying stick around until then, but I think it's important to recognize that their timeline is just different. And the reactions are not based on them being, like when they say, I'm never going to do something, it's not a boundary necessarily. It sounds like one, so I don't blame you guys for thinking that way. It's a declaration of their identity. It's how they're feeling in the moment. And so that's why I always mention, I've told y'all before, like don't take every time an avoidant declares their identity as truth because it's their identity today. Identities change all the time. People's identity changes. It should. That's healthy. That's normal that people's identity changes through the years, through the months, through the weeks even. So it's not a boundary. It's a, how would I even describe it? It's a perspective of who they are, but also who they want to be, who they want you to think they are. It doesn't always mean that that's never going to change. In fact, most of the time it means it's just a wound, right? The next one is clearly and kindly express what you want without expecting change right away. Example, I would like if one day we could take a trip together. To me, it would be romantic and I like spending time with you. What's your perspective on this? Would you be okay? I'll keep an open mind. Why is that really important? You explored your perspective, you opened the door for their perspective, and you also opened the door for both of you guys to compromise. Now, this is just a rough template, but why is this important? Because you clearly express what you want, but you're not expecting change right away, but you did imply you're looking for change. That doesn't mean you pressured it. I want to go on a trip. Josh and Kim always go on trips together. I wish that we could go on a trip. So you're not comparing, you're not upset. You're just expecting that this is something you want to see at least at one point. That is a little bit easier to swallow for an avoidant than pressuring and expecting it right away. And the next one is leaning into your independence without sacrificing your relationship to your partner. And so that doesn't mean you have to be 100% independent like your avoidant partner is, okay? But it means that if there are areas where you can be a little bit independent, you can lean into that so you can inspire yourself to find regulation in the way they see regulation. And this will help you guys to compromise in an emotional sense where both you guys are starting to see each other's perspectives. Because sometimes what ends up happening is while you're leaning into their independence, you could also at some points prompt them or mention that you want to be a little bit more connected during certain times. Or if you're being you're independent on a typical basis, I guess, but you have moments where you reach out when you need them, they will recognize, okay, this is not someone who's trying to take advantage of me. They need me to be dependable at this moment, but I know it's not an every time thing. It's a one-time thing, a two-time thing. It feels more trustworthy. And that's because that's how avoidant individuals perceive the world. It doesn't mean that they don't want you to lean on them. It's just avoidant individuals see things from their own lens. It's like they speak that kind of language. You speak your language. So if you're a little bit more independent, they will understand what you're saying a little bit more because they're starting to see your lifestyle from their lens. And so sometimes they take what you're saying a little bit more I wouldn't say valuable, but they understand it a little better because they perceive you as a more independent person, okay? I hope this video was helpful to at least one person. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.